Welcome to the Deep Dive,
Emerald City Hockey's Seattle Kraken podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Deep Dive Emerald City Hockey Seattle Kraken podcast. RJ, you're back. I'm still on my trip, but you had a nice little weekend excursion, just got back. Hope you had a good time.
Yes, I did. I was in Spokane for the weekend, so that was nice. Got to see Berkeley Catton Land, and maybe see some things that he's seen. I don't know. Maybe he's ridden on the Spokane Carousel, vintage from 1909. Maybe he's given some trash to the famous garbage goat. I don't know, but I have a bunch of stuff to ask him about as it relates to Spokane. We saw the arena. We didn't go in, but we saw the arena. We just missed their yard sale though by one day.
Oh,
They had all their extra merch and everything. Missed it by actually by about 4 hours, really getting in. So unfortunately, he missed that.
that is tough. I was gonna say you have questions for Catton. I now have a lot of questions for you because we have not had a chance to talk about this trip since you got back. We literally have to just record this first. Now I definitely have questions about a different part of Kraken country out there.
It was fun. You know what? I like Spokane. I will say it. I like Spokane.
Awesome. No, I definitely have to get out there at some point. We got exciting podcasts today. Always love when we do these listener mailbag episodes. So looking forward to answering questions. We're not even going to try to fit everything into one podcast this time. We've learned our lesson from the last couple mailbag episodes. This one will be split into two parts, and we'll continue on next week with the deep dive because there probably isn't going to be too much Kraken news then anyway. So if your question is not read on today's episode, know that it will be read next week.
Yep. And thank you everybody for submitting all these great questions. We should know by now, right? We put that mailbag out there. We got almost 40 questions. I think maybe upward of 40 questions from everybody. So way more than we can get to in one episode. But yeah, we'll get to it next week, right after talking about the Capo Caco extension that'll happen tomorrow at about 7 a.m., I'm sure.
Oh, yeah, most definitely. And then real quick, before we get into everything, just want to clarify something from last week's podcast that became a bit of a thing online in certain parts of the internet when we were talking about the hiring of Justin Wright and what his job is going to be with the Kraken and how he'll work with the players directly. Was it head of player strategy, working with players directly, especially going over film and looking at things there. There was this takeaway that I thought we did a good job trying to say was not the case, but there was a takeaway that we were inferring that the Kraken did no video work, which is not true. That wasn't what we were trying to say at all. They definitely did video work. The question was just always how effective was it, right? And how effective was it on the coaching side of things, and how effective was it from the player's standpoint of them implementing what they were working on after they would go over film and things like that. And really, the point that we were trying to make wasn't that it wasn't happening; it's that was it happening to the levels that it needed to. And I still hold to what we said last week, RJ, which is the fact that Justin Wright was hired in this position and based on the job description basically that he himself gave that I read last week from the article from Bob Condor. It sure feels like this is something where the Kraken felt like there was room for improvement in this area, and therefore this position was created. Justin Wright was brought on board, and that's what we'll have kind of moving forward. Again, it's not that it wasn't happening before, it's just that it maybe wasn't happening to the level that the Kraken wanted it to, or that they really needed it to be happening.
Right. We know that video work is done by every NHL team. You have
You
to
see it
do
on the
it.
schedule in the locker room.
Yeah, exactly. We see it on the schedule in the locker room. They have it. They have the different meetings, PK, power play, whatever. It's there. We see what time it is even that the players are doing that. So, of course, we know it happens. But yeah, the larger point, when you make a big change like that, it just clearly signals that you weren't happy with the way the process had been done. I think if it had been done not up to the standards you want, it would explain a lot about what happened with the team over the last couple of years. And to the Kraken's credit, they're taking real steps to try and fix it. And that's what you want to see in an organization. I feel like people may have focused too much on the point of being like, wow, this was so bad in the past. And, how awful was this? The real takeaway is that they're taking concrete steps to fix something that needed to be fixed. It needed to be better.
Right. It's another example of this organization taking this stuff seriously, sparing no expense, bringing more people involved to make sure that it happens and that it happens at the level that it needs to happen and that the team can be as good as it can be out there on the ice. So again, it's as we said last week too, it's a positive development that they're taking steps to address these things, that they're trying to be better, that they're going out there and trying to improve. These are things that we should be celebrating instead of focusing just on the past with it all. So just wanted to say that. Now, one thing I am not sorry for last week's podcast, RJ, and that is of course the ad read at the end, the segue into the Rico sponsorship, which of course we have to do here again. We love doing it, but that one was especially special. I feel like, and the community definitely engaged with it.
Oh, definitely. I think that's number one in my books. When you get me laughing enough that I really can't say anything else and you've got to finish the podcast yourself, I think that's a win for you. And of course, reading the top comments, from my left hand, Fusion Mix, loving that the sponsor read transition. So appreciate those comments from you guys. And I know Rico appreciates that. That's the kind of thing, right? That really helps when someone chooses to be part of this community and support us, to see that you guys are on board with that as well and enjoying the creative ad reads that we try to do.
Yep, exactly. And while we hope none of you ever need his services, the odds say that at some point someone out there will be involved in an accident, whether on the road, at work, or anywhere in between. And when you are, we hope you call Rico at 425-778-9800 or visit his website, ricotessendor.com, to schedule a free consultation. He's won millions of dollars for his clients and helped thousands of people in the greater Seattle area. And as a fellow member of the ECH community, we know he'll help you too. All right. So another quick couple things here before we get going and answering questions on the mailbag. First one, I'll throw over to you, RJ, because we do have a special announcement for the Kraken community.
Yes, no, I know a lot of you have been waiting for this, looking forward to this. If you've been to a past Oops All Goalies game, but got to share this one with you. So, Oops All Goalies, for those of you who don't know, it is an entire hockey game with only goalies, just a bunch of goalies out on the ice.
Everywhere
And
but in the crease.
everywhere but in the crease. That's the thing. That's the one area the goalies are not allowed to, because they can do that normally. They can do that during any other game, but you cannot actually play goal in this. You got to be out. You got to be acting as a skater. And so Oops All Goalies was created by Kyle Sorensen, a goalie himself, who thought that might be cool to get a bunch of goalies on the ice and actually make that happen. The first one happened, I believe, up in Bellingham.
Mhm.
Gosh, it's got to be about a year ago now, and the craze has swept the nation. I think they've happened in Colorado and elsewhere as well, where people picked up the idea. And then there was another one that was here at the Kraken Community Iceplex that I was lucky enough to get to go to, took a video of it. And I think that's still our most viewed video on Instagram, that little clip, over 2 million views, because it is just so wild to see in person. And so there's going to be another Oops All Goalies game, and you can check it out. It's August 23rd. There's going to be 2 back-to-back games at the Kraken Community Iceplex, 5:00 p.m. to 9:00 p.m. on the 23rd. And you can see the same type of game that created that 2 million view sensation. And you can see a whole bunch of goalies all playing at once. I believe last time, again, no guarantees for next time. I don't know what's going to happen, but I believe last time Joey Decord was also there to drop the ceremonial first puck. So this is a big deal in Seattle. And so wanted to get the word out about a really cool local event, August 23rd, 5 to 9 p.m. at KCI.
Yeah, definitely. It was a lot of fun. I was happy that I was able to make the last one, being up there. It was just so much fun to see that and just everything about it, right? Like the one-time goalies are in the crease is if they take a penalty, then they have to stop a penalty shot from a goalie. So seeing a penalty shot performed by a goalie is always something. And then of course the intermission nap times where these goalies, all the credit to them, skating out there, playing hard, they're going for it, they're trying to win. Those intermissions, they need to rest, skating in all those pads and everything, and they just collapse. And yeah, if you've ever seen like a kindergarten nap time scenario, it's pretty comparable.
Definitely. And the silliness levels too are just off the charts, whether it's
Yeah,
during play or otherwise. Like the sellies are amazing.
the
I've seen
costumes.
fights, I've seen costumes. There's the goalie in a hot dog costume that's there. If you don't can't imagine what that would look like, just come and see it.
Yeah,
Santa costume last
Santa.
time I
Yep.
think was great. Like it is one of the best hockey events you can go and see. By the way, for free.
Yep.
for free. Doesn't cost you anything to get in. Just show up and cheer on these awesome goalies. It's going to be a great time. And I know my wife is going to have some family visiting that day.
Oh, perfect.
I'm going to lobby pretty hard
Yeah.
that that's what we should all go out and do on that day.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. The last bit of news before we get to the questions here is just that, yeah, the Kraken schedule was released this past week. We're not really going to break it down in this episode of the deep dive or even next week because we're going to be saving that for when we do our way too early go through every game of the schedule, predict what we think is going to happen, and we'll talk about things too, such as the months. Which months have the hardest and weakest strength of schedule based off of last year and everything like that. We'll do like a kind of our full deep dive into the schedule in a couple weeks in August. But we just wanted to let everybody know that schedule is out there. If you haven't seen it already, you can go check it out, and we'll be talking about it in a couple weeks' time. All right, let's go ahead, RJ, and dive into these mailbag questions.
Yep, let's go. And I don't want to spend any more time on anything else because we've got a lot of questions to get to. So let's dive right in. And the first one is actually schedule related. I think you want to take a look at the
Mhm.
schedule to help answer this one. This one from Commodore Schmidlap. I like to cheer on the Kraken in enemy territory once a year. Last year I did Vegas, which was fun, except for the losing part. Where should I go this year to see the Kraken on the road, considering both the hockey atmosphere and the city itself? So I've got a couple picks, Dylan. Do you want to go first or should I?
Yeah. I also came up with a couple, but really it's one that I personally would prioritize, and I think that based on everybody I know who's done this and made this pilgrimage, they've all said that it was a really good time, and that's Montreal. Just
When you
great.
said pilgrimage, I knew.
Yeah, exactly. It's a great city. From everybody I've ever heard who's visited there, whether for a hockey game or not, they've just had a great time in the city itself. So you have that element of it there. Great history with the sport as well. If you're a hockey fan, going to a game in Montreal is just something that feels like it should happen. I know I'm still waiting for that moment, but it's definitely something I want to make happen. Whenever I can. And then also, the game in Montreal this year is mid-October, so the weather's not going to be too bad yet. I know that from going to Toronto last year, and I know it's probably a little bit of a different climate, but it sounds like the weather up there in that part of Canada starts getting bad day one of November, but through October, you're still okay. So weather probably shouldn't be too bad. You'll still have some good sunshine, hopefully, to be able to check things out. And then finally, just from the game standpoint, I mean, the Kraken always play the Canadians tough. Those are always good competitive games, or they're Kraken blowouts. Either way, you're getting something that you want to see if you're a Kraken fan making that trip out to Montreal. So it is early in the schedule. You're getting that big trip out of the way in that first month, first couple weeks, really. But I do think like Montreal probably should be it.
Yeah, it's actually the first road game of the season. So you can go check them out on the road for the first time this year. And you know that Brandon Montour is going to get at least 4 points if last season's
Yeah.
anything to go by. So that's going to be pretty fun. So I'm with you on Montreal. That was also number one on my list. Would love to go. I haven't had the chance to go yet. And another one that I haven't had the chance to, but I've heard great things across the board. Not quite the traditional hockey mecca that Montreal is, but Nashville. Yeah. Did we
That's
pick the
my
same
two.
two?
Yes, that's my number two.
Okay, well, maybe this should make you feel more confident where your next destination should be. Dylan and I swear we didn't talk about this at all. Well, we agreed on these two, but I'll take Nashville here. Again, the atmosphere in the arena is awesome. The fans are super loud. The city's really fun. If you like hot chicken, go get some Nashville hot chicken. That's going to be good. The food scene's really good. And another probable win, I would think. Nashville, not the best team either. That one's March 19th. So I guess if you want to do a later one in the season,
Mhm.
you go Nashville. If you want to go earlier, I'd say Montreal.
That's what I was thinking too, like springtime maybe, right, coming into play down there. Hopefully before the summer humidity and heat really kind of kicks off there in Tennessee. But yeah, just everything I've heard from fellow reporters, from hockey fans, from all that stuff, the whole scene down there in Nashville is just fantastic. You've got all of the music clubs, you've got the fun bars if you're into that sort of thing. And then of course you've got the incredible atmosphere that it seems like Nashville has down there and has for a long time. And so it's another one that's been towards the top of my list of places to visit. And I got to imagine it would be a fun place for any Kraken fan looking to plan a road trip to go.
Yeah, definitely. So unanimous answer there from us. Full agreement. Next question here from Bell Mel. Submitted a late submission, but we'll include it. What bobbleheads or other giveaways would you like to see next season? So this is an interesting question. I am surprising you with this one, Dylan, because I already
Yeah.
sent you the notes. So you just found out about this right now. But I think that's a good thing because your brilliance tends to come when I propose a challenge to you or something like this last minute. You just think of the best ideas on the spot, but I'll give you a little bit more time to think because I have two bobbleheads that I think, and these are safer picks. Like these aren't super creative, but I'm not a super creative person. So we'll just go with these two. I think we got to see a Shane Wright bobblehead.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's the big one the Kraken haven't gotten to yet. As for, because I know they like to commemorate certain moments or have a theme
Hmm.
to it, right? That first career goal versus Montreal would be a
Hmm.
fun one to celebrate. So maybe something like that for Shane Wright. And then Brandon Montour. I want to see a Monty bobblehead. And I think it would be or should be based around that goal he scored against Montreal, the fastest overtime goal in
Hmm.
NHL history. And I was trying to think, how do you kind of commemorate that when you could, have him doing the celebration or whatever. But he scored 4 seconds in. And I think you got to somehow express the 4 seconds. I was like, could you do, I don't know, like an audio clip of 4 seconds of just him scoring? But then I thought about what about this? A timer, like a little sand timer,
Hmm.
and you can bobble the head and you can like flip the sand timer around and it just has 4 seconds worth of sand. And that's how fast he scored. He could even be like holding it or something. I don't know. This
That's
idea isn't fully complete, but
no, that's pretty good because like that is what has made the Kraken bobbleheads kind of so memorable. Has been having fun things. I think the Oliver Bjorkstrand one is still probably my favorite. Just having the maestro and he's got the music in front of him written by Benny Drawbars, like all of that stuff has been fantastic. I'm with you. I like bobbleheads that commemorate a moment more so than just like a player bobblehead. Did we ever get a Joey Decord Winter Classic shutout? I
I
don't.
don't
We
think so.
didn't.
The Decord bobblehead was
It
something
was just a
else, right?
stand. It was just kind of like a standard Decord bobblehead. It felt like last year a lot of them were more or less just
Yeah.
kind of like standard player bobbleheads. I think that they should commemorate moments. Personally, I think those are the bobbleheads. Those are the bobbleheads I tend to hold on to and keep anyway. Um, so I think it should probably be something like that. I like that one for Brandon Montour and commemorating that moment. I think at some point, yes, the Winter Classic Joey Decord bobblehead should just happen. That how do you not do that? How have you not done that already? You had all of last year to do that. So you should probably do something like that. As for other giveaways, my mind immediately went to something that I could give to Afra. I want some sort of pet giveaway. I think that Seattle is a great pet city. So many people up there have pets. There are certain parts of Seattle where pets outnumber children. Let's the kids get enough giveaways. Let's give something to the pets. I think I want something kind of for pets. You'd probably have to make it a little bit universal, right? Like you're not going to just go with like something for a dog because you got plenty of cat lovers out there just like you.
Yes.
But I think that something for pets, something that could kind of go with pets would be really cool and something that we just haven't seen yet. But that's kind of a direction I would like to see them go. I don't know specifically what it would be. Maybe it's just like a dish or something like that that you can give them water out of. But I
It
think
should be
that would be
cheddar
cool.
themed.
Yeah, yeah,
If
definitely
it's a
make it
dog
better
thing, it should be cheddar themed.
for sure. I
And if
mean,
there is a Kraken player who is a cat person, which we still need to do another check there, then it should be based around their cat.
yes, we should. You could really kind of try to settle the debate amongst the community. Make it so that there's like a dog themed one and a cat themed one, and maybe they're bobbleheads. Who knows? And everybody chooses as they go in, and then we can get the numbers to see if there are more dog people or cat people in the Kraken fan base.
I am a cat person. I love cats, but I feel like we probably
You're
would
losing
not
that
win that
one.
one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're
we're
losing
losing
that one.
that one, unfortunately. But
Yeah,
good ideas there, and appreciate the question there, Bell Mel on the
definitely.
bobbleheads, and also just want to give a little shout out to Nicole Shabazz, who works with the Kraken and is in charge of creating the bobbleheads
Mhm.
and giveaway items. I mean, Shabs does an awesome job every single year. So if there's a bobblehead or giveaway in the past that you've liked, she's the one behind it. So I want to
Yeah.
make sure to give her credit for all the great ones that they have done. Next question from Kraken Hawks Huskies. Would love you to each rank the top 5 or 10 seasons from a Kraken player over the last 4 years. Selfishly, I'm curious where Joey's year this past season ranks. Thanks for considering the question. So 5 or 10 in the question. I think we both decided to just do 5 because oh boy, does it get into the weeds real quick if you do 10. And I know you said to me before we started recording, just seeing how many we wanted to do, like how many times can we just list Vince Dunn and Jared McCann in here, which I guess would be 8, technically 4
Yes.
seasons for each, and then 2 Joey Decord seasons, and you're done.
Basically, right? Like that's about how it goes. So yeah, I did do 5. Should we say all 5, or do you want to go one at a time back and forth here?
Let's just say all 5. We'll just share the full list, and then we'll kind of see where it differs.
Okay. Um, Top 5 for me, Vince Dunn, year 2. I mean, that was just an
Mhm.
incredible season that he had. I still think that it is the best season any Kraken player has ever had was Vince Dunn, year 2. Followed shortly by Jared McCann, year 2. Again, best forward season that a player has ever had for the Seattle Kraken, in my opinion, happened there. And then things get a little interesting here, RJ. This is the one time where I do have a player doubling up, and it is in the 3 and 4 spot, and that is Joey year 4, followed by Joey year 3. Okay.
Okay.
I gave year 4 the nod because while his conventional goalie stats aren't quite as good, just the way he tried to keep the Kraken in games, he was under fire so much last season. The goals saved above average and everything was just so much larger, actually, year 4 over year 3, which I was surprised to see when I kind of went back and looked at the numbers for this. I just felt like last year was a really special season from Joey Decord in what he was able to do. There's the amount of games the Kraken were in that they shouldn't have been in, was remarkable. So I gave the nod to year 4, but not trying to take away anything from year 3. I mean, Joey has made his mark on this franchise completely, and then Matty Beniers year 2 takes the 5 spot for me. Yeah, look, to be honest, like going through the top 10, and like trying to look at a top 10, it feels like a lot of these lists should be pretty similar for anybody doing this, just because there's, for one reason or another, only been in so many like real true standout seasons from guys. And those are the ones that stood out. But I'm saying that because, yeah, it sounds like my list is probably pretty close to yours based on your face.
Yep, it is. It is. There's only one difference in the list. But we both have, the Vince Dunn year 2 season first. The one difference we have is we have 2 and 3 flipped. I went with Joey's season last year as number 2 over McCann's as number 3, and it was really close in my mind. But I still think a goalie season where I mean you put up 20 goals saved above expected for Joey Decord, and especially the workload that he had. I
Mhm.
think that actually does. And I still think the stats don't even fully capture just how good he was because a lot of the ones where the team just completely gave up in front of him in some of those games that really kind of tanked those numbers worse than what they otherwise would have been. I think that contributes more to a team's success. If you can get that kind of season out of a goalie, than even a 40 goal, 70-point season from a forward. I think that actually is even more valuable, but it's really close.
Yeah, no, definitely. And then, Matty Beniers year 2, just to like say why we have that on there. Because it was amazing, right? 24 goals, had the 57 points, I believe were the numbers. And yeah, just what he was able to do coming on the scene. I thought about putting Matty year 1 just because of that 10 incredible games that he played at the end of year 1, which honestly still might be his best 10-game stretch of hockey played at the National Hockey League level. But I gave the nod to year 2 because he was able to be that offensive force and really show up for the Kraken while also still being one of the top defensive centers in the National Hockey League as a rookie. Very deserving of the Calder that he won that year, and I think deserving of a top 5 spot here.
Yeah, I'm with you, and just look at the defensive impacts too. I mean, that's a big part of it as well. And you look at other seasons from other players, right? Nobody really stood out that much aside from just more Jared McCann seasons from a scoring perspective, and what Matty was able to do defensively just puts that over the top for me.
Yep, exactly. So,
All
but
right.
I did like that question.
Yes. No, it was a good question. Really fun to go back and kind of do the research and see what we thought. So next question here from AJ. What's your prediction for the opening night lineup? So I imagine just kind of like the last one, we've each prepared a quick opening night lineup that we think. And maybe I'll go first this time.
Yeah, go for it.
All right. So net out, I think Joey Decord will start. Philip Grubauer will back up. No huge surprises there. And I have assumed in my lineup that everybody is healthy. There may be a training camp injury, but I'm not factoring that in. I'm not going to
Yeah.
predict a specific one. So I'm going Dunn Larson, first D pair. I think you could set your watch to that one. I think Lindgren Montour, I think they're going to want to give that a try and
Hmm.
see how that works together. And then Alexiak Evans rounding out the D. And of course, Mahura would be a healthy scratch. Forward lines, I think they're Schwartz, Beniers, Kako, at least in the beginning. I think they're going to
Yep.
want to stick with that because it was working. Why change it? Second and third lines, kind of interchangeable, which is the second and third, but I'll go second one here. I'll go Mason Marchment with Chandler Stevenson and Berkeley Catton, because I think Catton's going to make the team initially. He's going to play his 9 games, and you're going to want to put him in a spot on the second line to succeed. Third line, if you can call it that, McCann, Wright, and Eberle, tried and true. We know that one works. And then fourth line, Tolvanen, Gaudreau, and then I think Yanni Newman. And I could totally see a Cartier or a John Hayden here, but I think to start the year, maybe you give Newman the nod and you kind of send him down later if he's not able to get the ice time he needs.
Yeah, no, interesting lines there. So I'm in total agreement on goaltending, defense, and line one, right? Like
Yeah.
those, I don't even know how you could do anything else, honestly, to start the season. So really, it's where like we get into like second, third line stuff. I do think Chandler Stevenson will be centering the second line, whatever that in
Yeah.
quotes. And I don't know. I think that loading him up with Catton and Mason Marchment is really interesting. I think that what we'll see there is instead something like Jared McCann. Give him a shooter. He's a good passer. Give him a shooter there on that one side, and then on the other side, I'm going to be interested to see. I could see like doubling up with the shooting and giving Ellie Tolvanen a shot in the top 6 and kind of
Interesting.
playing him over there and kind of putting him in like a one-timer spot kind of on his offside there. So I could see something like that maybe playing out, or just again, you're trying to, if you're really going to make that your second line and kind of go with it, that becomes, what that line is out there to try and do. And then with Shane Wright, I think you want Mason Marchment with him to just open up space for him, be a big net front presence for him, hopefully do what Capo Caco was able to do for Maddie. But I think that Mason Marchment and Shane Wright are going to be tied at the hip to start the season. I just don't see anything else happening there. And I think that that's where you then see Berkeley Catton, because I think Berkeley Catton's getting his 9 games and you're not going to stick him on the fourth line. But I think that, why not throw him out there with Shane Wright and his creativity out there on the ice? You have Mason Marchment making space for both of them. And then Berkeley Catton's creativity hopefully wears off a little bit on Shane Wright. And Shane Wright starts thinking with more of an offensive mindset out there in the offensive zone, especially. And I would like to kind of see him with a really dynamic, creative winger, somebody who can feed him passes when Shane Wright wants to go to that low slot area to take his shots. Somebody who's going to be able to be on the perimeter and give him the puck in those spots. I think Berkeley Catton can be it. And then fourth line. What?
Real quick, you've sold me on the chemistry working with those two guys. Like, I think that's great. This is an NHL coaching staff we're talking about here. I feel like it's the pairing that we're going to be asking for and wanting, but won't get at least early on.
Well, it's entirely possible. Like
So that's the only thing. I love the
yeah,
idea.
yes. That's entirely possible. Again, if that lineup was to happen, I could see an NHL coaching staff really being like, okay, this is a definitive third line. Right. And that's why you load up the second line and you just try to go out there and you try, they score. First line is there to shut down opposing teams' top lines, plus get some stuff done in the offensive zone and maybe play a little gritty when they have to. And then that third line is just, we're trying to have a third line that's more skilled than somebody else's third line and win that matchup would be
You
the
can shelter
idea
them
that,
like they like to. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So, and then, fourth line, Gaudreau centering, uh, Jordan Eberle, who is controversial to maybe have on the fourth line. You could swap him with Tolvanen up on the second line, but I would like to see Tolvanen up there and given that chance. I think that Eberle ultimately will probably end up with Shane Wright. I don't know that Catton will stick. That's like where it kind of comes down to. We'll see. But Gaudreau with Jordan Eberle, and then I think it'll be a rotating thing. I think as long as Catton's up, Yanni Newman's not up. I just don't think they go with 2 young guys. And so I think it's a rotation based off of who you're playing that night and whether or not you want to play fast or physical between Ty Cartier and John Hayden. But I think that both those guys are basically it's just a nightly opponent based decision.
Yeah, and I think with Anaheim, you might want to go toward playing fast. I think that's
Yeah.
probably the best way to do it, and that's why I had Newman is because with Anaheim, I mean, we saw what that could do for Shane Wright as far as an easier matchup in
Hmm.
terms of trying to score and playing in a bottom six role. So that's why I like it for Newman just for opening night. I don't know. Maybe you just send him down before the Vegas game and just leave him down. Although there's not much use in having him just up for opening night. You don't need to worry about the cap purposes, but yeah, you're probably more right on the vets being up rather than Newman to start.
Yeah, I think as long as Catton's there, we probably don't see both of them. If they hadn't brought in as many forwards as they brought in this offseason, I would say differently. But I think that they'll kind of play a wait and see. If Catton looks good and they're like, okay, he's going to hang around here, I think then we see Yanni Newman brought into a lineup alongside Berkeley Catton. Maybe not on the same line, but
Yeah,
both of them being in the lineup. But I think if they're gonna give the 9 games to Berkeley Catton and see where he's at, they're going to want to make sure that they have a veteran roster around him. And with Yanni Newman and being waivers exempt, all that stuff, there's no rush to put him in the NHL right away if Catton's there and trying things out.
that's true. And well, I think that's a good transition to our next question from Earhead 6. What are Berkeley Catton and Yanni Newman's chances of sticking with the big club this fall? So you just said that maybe Berkeley Catton you think probably doesn't stick, or more likely that he doesn't. What about him after the 9 games? Where do you think that's going? And then, of course, Yanni Newman, does that impact things for him?
Yeah, I think obviously if Berkeley Catton doesn't stick for the 9 games after the 9 games, and he does have to go back to Spokane, then Yanni Newman absolutely comes up into the lineup. I think either way, Yanni Newman is finishing the season with the Seattle Kraken, and I'm guessing that he plays more than half the season with the Kraken.
Yeah,
It's just that I could see it being a little bit delayed while they're seeing what they have in Berkeley Catton. Um, I'm only saying this also with Berkeley Catton just because of the size factor. Like skill wise, he's definitely ready to play at the NHL level. I just want to see how he's going to do against NHL sized competition, and can he survive and be effective enough to get the minutes that he's going to need to get, right? Like what I don't want to see is they're just like he's too good for Spokane, so we're keeping him up here at the NHL level, but we start seeing kind of the Shane Wright right after Shane Wright was drafted and put in, where he's getting like 9 minutes a night. That's just not going to work. And so I think that it's just one where until I see it, that's kind of what I'm thinking with Berkeley Catton. But it's close. Like I'm talking like 55-45 split. I think he doesn't stay with the big club. Yanni Newman, though, I think he plays more than 41 games with the Kraken this season, barring injury, of course. But I think that he'd be called up sooner rather than later, regardless of what the Catton decision is. I just don't think it makes sense for them to start both of them at the beginning of the year.
yeah, agreed on Newman. I think that just makes a ton of sense. He should be a more or less full time NHLer
He's an
this season.
NHLer though, like for
He's
sure.
he's an NHLer for sure. We saw it at the end of last year, and yeah, with Catton, it just feels so hard to even predict because like it's going to be entirely dependent on how those 9 games go. Like nobody knows at this point for sure. And speaking of Berkeley Catton, though, interesting question from Hammer: will people buy Catton number 77 sweaters or wait until next year, number 27, after Mason Marchment is dealt at the trade deadline? Now, kind of an interesting question there. I mean, like it sounds like Berkeley Catton's going to wear number 77 this year. Of course,
Mhm.
27 taken by Mason Marchment. If you're asking for yourself, Hammer, I would suggest if you want to get a Berkeley Catton jersey, get the 77. I mean, I think you see people with Jared McCann number 16 jerseys, and I whenever I see that, I think that's really cool. It shows
Mhm.
you were a fan from the early days with that particular player, and even if he does change the number, like I think that's fine. I'd be happy holding on to the one with the old number with the rookie number. I think that's really cool. As for what most fans will do, I think if I don't know if you're really dead set on a Catton jersey, I feel like you wouldn't want to wait.
Yeah, I was gonna say it really comes down to your own personal, kind of thought process around this. Like I'm with you. I think having a rookie year number is not a bad thing. It shows that you are a believer in that player before they reach the highs that they're going to have at the NHL level. So I think that that's something that's cool. But if you're somebody that's going to be like, wow, it kind of bugs me that this player, say Berkeley Catton plays 15 years with the Seattle Kraken, and there was only 1 year where he wore this other number, and you just have the jersey from that 1 year, and you just feel a disconnect because the number on your back is different from the number on his back. Just wait until the trade deadline. Like you could you don't even have to wait that long. You just got to wait like 6 months, and you'll kind of know where you're at and where the Kraken are at with that. So I think it's one where you just and have to ask yourself that question: will it bother you if your number is going to be different than his for the next decade, or are you on board with the whole I was an early adopter, I was a believer from the beginning, and I want to display that? And I think that that's just a personal choice everybody's going to have to make.
Yep, personal preference, exactly. So next question, I'm going to combine these two. One from Luke and from Jeff. From Luke, which of our players do you think will be the biggest winners and losers in Lambert's system, and why? And Jeff, what player do you think will be most surprised by this year, given the new system and lines, positively or negatively? So a couple similar questions having to do with the Kraken getting a new coaching staff, new systems everyone's going to have to play in, and which players are going to be most affected by that, to the positive and to the negative. So I have a list of winners and a list of losers, and the list of winners is definitely longer than the list of losers for me as I thought about it.
Yeah, there's definitely some good winners here. I mean, do we want to go like position group, like talk forwards first and then
Let's do that.
defensemen?
Yeah. Let's
Okay.
do that.
Big winner for me forward group wise. I mean, the two top guys in my opinion that stand out the most are Jaden Schwartz and Mason Marchment,
Yep.
because they're going to get to do some big work out there, and certainly work that they like doing, right? They're going to be able to go to the net front. They're going to be able to play that gritty style. They should be in a spot where they're going to have lots of rebound chances there or backdoor opportunities. I just think that those two guys doing what they can do, and we'll see if Capo Caco joins them and kind of finishes the transformation into a true power forward type. I'm not totally sold. He's a great skater, good skill guy. He doesn't quite go to the net the same way that Jaden Schwartz and Mason Marchment go to it, but I just think Jaden Schwartz and Mason Marchment are going to have some opportunities to just be part of some incredible scoring chances.
Yeah, fully on board with those two. I had three forwards on my list, so I'll skip those two. I think you covered it pretty well. The other one I had was Matty Beniers,
Hmm.
because you look at that system that's going to be based around being solid defensively in your own zone, and you kind of need a shutdown center who can handle big minutes, big opposition in the way that Matty Beniers really did last season, and that line did last season. But I think it's going to be even more a part of the way the team wants to play. All of a sudden, he's a fit, right? When you had
Hmm.
Dan Bilesma and the kind of fast moving, we want to be a fast team, get up the ice quick type of thing. Matty Beniers can skate. He can do
Yep.
that, but he's just not a natural in that sort of system where I think he could really thrive under Lane Lambert.
Yeah, he's not an attack off the rush style
Yeah.
guy. He wants controlled entries. He wants to kind of do things that way, and I do think that that'll be a benefit. And we know from breaking down like kind of Lane Lambert's system with the Islanders that a couple of years ago, what he was running, it does require some skating back defensively, right? Like you got to get back quick. But I think that Matty Beniers can do that because he can scoot. I also think that it's going to open up opportunities for Matty Beniers to maybe be the primary forechecker, and I think that that's something I'm really intrigued to see, because so much of back when I scouted him before the Kraken drafted him, that's just where he buttered his bread. Like he was just so good at doing that. I also think on special teams, if they put him in a Lane Lambert PK system, he's just going to be such a dog out there. Like it's going to be so much fun to watch him on the PK if they give him those opportunities. And there's no reason that they
Which
shouldn't.
they should. I was going to say,
Yes.
you better.
But I just think Matty Beniers could definitely look fun out there.
Yep. Now for the blue line, I had
Mhm.
a couple winners on the blue line, and it's Jamie Alexiak, who I think was probably a big loser
Number
of
one. Yep.
the Dan Bilesma system, and I think this is going to be much much better for the way he likes to play. And then the other new arrival, Ryan Lindgren. I mean, I think this is a case of just going out and finding and signing someone who fits with the system that you're about to run. Kind of in the way the Kraken did with Montour and Stevenson last year and what that was supposed to be.
Yeah, no, I'm with you with both of those. I'll throw Adam Larson in just because the last couple seasons of kind of playing, especially last season, a more zone-based system, which they'll still run under Lambert, but there will be some tweaks and probably more of an emphasis on net front defending. I think that that's kind of what Adam Larson has missed. There was just so many times last year where he was kind of caught in no man's land, a little too far out from the net, but not really in the corner. I just think that, as much as we talked about Jamie Alexiak struggling with the system last year, Adam Larson was also struggling with it. It felt like at times, and I think that going back to more of a traditional classic based system will benefit him up there on the first line as well.
Yeah. And then also, I want to say for the goalies, I think both goalies are going to be winners, or really
Yes.
all three goalies potentially could be winners from this system. I mean, it's hard not to have improvement over what the goalies had in front of them last year, but really, hopefully, you should be better defensively in front of your netminder. It'd be hard to be worse. So I think Decor and Grubauer and potentially even Matt Murray are going to be winners there.
Yep, definitely. As for losers, RJ, um, there's one name that kind of stands out in the forward group for me most of all, and that's Jordan Eberle.
Mm.
Just because
Yeah.
we saw him on the Islanders under Barry Trotz running similar system to what then Lane Lambert ran with the Islanders, and Jordan Eberle was not always the most effective player in that system, right? Like he put up some numbers, but not similar numbers to what we know that he could put up or what he was on pace for last year when he was in more of an offense that was going to let him kind of open up and be a guy that could go up and down the ice. So I think for me, him having to kind of go back into more of a defensive mindset and fold and grind it out and be a forechecker and all of that stuff, it felt like he was just finally working himself out of that with the Kraken, and now he's going right back in.
Right. I think that's probably his most natural fit. And you saw that with the success that he had while he was healthy last year. He can make it work. He's a good
Yeah, you
veteran
can.
player who played in that system for a while. Like he can absolutely make it work, but I think it kind of stops him short of his full potential. And I think it's a little harder to play as you're, 34, 35 years old rather than back when he was his late 20s and was
I just
playing
had a
that
major
system
hip
too.
injury and stuff, like, it's
Yeah.
tough.
It's iffy. The other forward I had, and I'm sorry, it was Chandler Stevenson. It's the opposite of a Matty Beniers, right? I think this system, it's based around really good 200-foot centers, who can affect things really well on both ends of the ice, especially defensively. And that's why it makes sense to go with Lane Lambert, because the guys that really matter, your future, is Matty Beniers and Shane Wright, and both of those qualify, I think, under that category. Chandler Stevenson was supposed to be a great fit under Dan Biles's system, and he definitely brought that speed and the playmaking there. I just don't know how he fits on a Lane Lambert team. He's going to stick out.
Yeah, I totally agree.
And then on the blue line, I think really it's the more offensively minded guys, particularly Vince Dunn first and foremost, because he's not going to have the same chances to move the puck up ice because he likes to do it via
Yeah.
longer stretch passes, ambitious things like that. And I know it kind of went sour at times last year, just because no one was. So if you just get everyone in sync, I think that'll help. But
Yeah.
really, where he shines the most, I just don't think he's going to have a ton of opportunity, especially on the breakout.
Do you think, though, that he gets a little bit of, like, a special pass?
I think he might, but the problem is you kind of need everybody on the ice on board
Yeah.
with like what he's doing. You need the forwards to be already having plays where they're going, and maybe you draw up some stuff for just like when he's on the ice, but it's going to be harder to do, I think. Whereas a Brandon Montour, I think like still this is not the best fit for him, but he's going to get the puck up the ice by skating it himself, and that's going
Yeah.
to be less impacted by the system.
I agree. I agree. Riker Evans is also gonna be interesting too, because, again, you were kind of trying to groom him to be this guy that was going to be an offensive defenseman, and now and that had iffy results, especially last year. And now it's going to be very much you're throwing him into a system where defense is what matters and is more important. He's going to have to be more of a guy net front and all of that. And it just feels like something that Riker Evans hasn't really had to do. Whether it was playing in Regina in the WHL, whether it's in Coachella Valley under Dan, and then certainly at the NHL level under Dan, that's just not really where he was at. And so I think that it might be a little bit of a difficult transition for him, and we might see some up and down play from him while he adjusts to that this year.
And I think his next contract, whenever that ends up happening, I think that might be telling as far
Mhm.
as the level of risk the organization feels they're taking as far as a fit there.
Yeah.
So back to the lines based questions. This one from Dave: does Shane Wright make it onto the second line this year, especially in Lane Lambert's defensive system, where which he will thrive in, and finally get the minutes he needs to develop? So, we wanted to see more ice time for Shane Wright
Yep.
last season. This was a big talking point. Does it finally happen this year? And kind of how does he gel with Lane Lambert's system?
I think he will be somebody who can be effective in Lane Lambert's system because he does have kind of a defensive mindset. That is something, part of the game he takes very seriously. I don't think that he's going to get the second line ice time, because I think we're going to see a situation similar to last year where the team is going to try to be as competitive as possible. And Chandler Stevenson is just a guy that, one, has already worked with Lane Lambert, like they have a relationship already, and is just the more veteran presence, and is, potentially early on going to be producing better as far as just raw counting stats. And I think that it's just going to be hard for Lane Lambert and the coaching staff to start giving him less minutes and Shane more minutes in that scenario. Now, what I think we could see this year compared to last year is it becomes close, trade deadline time. The team is making the decision not to, that they're not in it, if that's the case, and we see then Shane Wright get more ice time, and it will come at the expense of Chandler Stevenson, but it'll be done in a sense of, we got to see what we have in Shane Wright and where he's going and where his development is and all of that kind of stuff, and it won't be kind of like a big deal at that point. But I just don't see an NHL coach, especially one with an organization where you are the third coach in 3 years, going out there and being like, let's do the roller coaster of this kid adapting to the top six instead of, a Stanley Cup champion I have here that I feel like I can trust and give big minutes to.
Yeah, I would love to be wrong on this, but I think this is something that's going to continue to frustrate us earlier in the season, because we know our mindset is that it's a transition year, and we all are kind of thinking that, but that's not going to be the mindset of the coaching staff. And you have a coach who, and I think it was telling a little bit too in his introductory presser too with Lambert, asked about the balance between playing young guys so they can develop and playing veterans, and his answer, I don't remember exactly, so I'm going to paraphrase, but basically, young guys can help you win. There's a time and a place, for them, right? Not exactly like a ringing endorsement of wanting to give them the biggest chances that you can. And so I think that's something that we're going to continue to see, is Shane Wright maybe not getting the opportunity that we would like until maybe later in the season when it's already over.
It's a tough catch-22, because basically what NHL coaches are waiting for from a young guy like a Shane Wright in this scenario is for him to show that he's the guy. The problem is they're never giving him the chance to be the guy. And so it's one of those catch-22 things where, unfortunately, in scenarios like this, when you are stuck in, a, in a depth chart that has a lot of guys in front of you, and guys with, pedigree in front of you, you have to find ways to make them think that you can handle that. And so this is where, like, again, this year I really feel like is the year for Shane Wright to go out there and try to have a more aggressive mindset, really try to force the issue in a way that he didn't really last year at times, and go out there and really try to assert yourself and make it so that they can't give you 15 minutes a night, right? Like put them in the spot where they have to give you more ice time. It's tough to do. It sucks that young players have to do this in the National Hockey League. Like, I think teams need to be better about not being in this spot. And it's not all teams that are always in this spot, but for a team like the Kraken that needs to be competitive early on for a lot of reasons, and you have a new coach coming in and you have the history with the coaches and everything, I just don't see it at the beginning of the year, unfortunately.
Yeah, it has to be the kind of thing where I think of how Dan Bosman talked about Ty Karche when he was in CV, right? Or in the call up. What did he say? Like, he left no doubt in anyone's mind
Yeah.
that he was going to be the guy. And I think Shane just has to play in a way that leaves no doubt in anyone's mind that he should be the second line center.
Right. Go out there, own it on your power play minutes, right? You're going to be probably on the second unit power play. Control that power play. Like, be the guy that is making that power play work. Do things like that, and that will grab the coach's attention, and they'll start putting you then in more 5-on-5 situations where you can kind of do things. Or, again, let the defense stuff figure it out, because you're probably going to be better than Stevie in those spots.
Yeah, and hopefully that's something the coaching staff will see. So next question here from Luke. If McCann goes, in parentheses, please no, who do you think fills this goal-scoring void? His down year was still one of the best on the team, with Bylsma underutilizing him. So we talked about Jared McCann trade rumors last episode, and I don't see it happening anytime soon. I think that's a deadline conversation you start having, right? But if and when he is let go, who would have to go fill that goal scoring void and who gets more opportunity. Because my first thought, and you mentioned it already on the opening lineup discussion, was Ellie Tolvanen. I think if you
Mhm.
have that spot in the top six that opens up in the near term, Tolvanen would be the obvious guy to go and take it, unless he was also moved at the deadline or something. And then if not him, then you have your couple young wingers or wingers for now in Yanni Newman and Berkeley Catton, who I think will be a winger to start things off. Those guys could also get more opportunity.
Yeah, those are really the 3 names that stand out, unless you're getting somebody back. You're right, like a prospect or somebody that maybe has that potential, in a trade from Jared McCann. But yeah, Ellie Tolvanen after Jared McCann is your next best natural goal scorer, right? Particularly on the wing, like, he is just that guy, and it's a drop off, right? Like, that is you are taking a step back in goal production going from McCann to Ellie Tolvanen there. I do think that Berkeley Catton makes sense, though, because on the flip side, because he's not going to score the goals that Jared McCann scores, but he has the potential to be that point producer that you have really never had if you're the Seattle Kraken. Somebody who can just truly create offense out there, regardless of who they're playing with. He's going to rack up points. He can still probably put up 20, 25, but then he can add on top of it, you know, 40, 50, 60 assists, more in his prime. But like that's the kind of offensive driver that this team has just truly never had. Because while Jared McCann is great and can score 40 goals and stuff for you and leads the team in points every year, you need somebody that's going to have more than like 60 points at the end of a season. And right now, Berkeley Catton is the guy that just seems most tailor made to do that.
Yeah, and you'll see that reflected in the goal totals of the guys who play with him. You won't always see it in his own goal totals,
Mhm.
but it's just kind of spread out, usually among just his line mates. So that's kind of
It'll
where
be
you'll
a
see it
focal
also.
point of the power play too, in a way that it's more limiting with Jared McCann, right? Like we've seen plenty of times where the power play is designed to get Jared McCann the puck. The problem is the other team knows Jared McCann's just going to shoot that puck, right? If the power play is built around giving it to a distributor like Berkeley Catton, power play doesn't know what he's going to do with it because he's just going to look at the defense, or the penalty kill doesn't know what he's going to do with it because he's just going to look at them and pick apart wherever their weak point is.
Yeah,
And
he has
that,
five options, four
right.
teammates and a shot.
Right. That's more valuable to your team as far as actually getting goals on the board. Even though he's not necessarily scoring them, he could, in essence, generate more goals than Jared McCann is generating for you.
Yep. No, exactly. So I think they're going to have guys step up, but it's going to be the young guys that are the future of the team.
Yeah.
So next question from that Kraken fan, as we transition to some more armchair GM type questions, what's going on with Riker Evans? I think we're all distracted by Capo Caco. We haven't talked about his re-signing. Thanks, guys. Go Kraken. So similar to Capo Caco, restricted free agent, hasn't signed yet. And similar to Capo Caco, no reason to worry at all. Even less reason potentially
Yeah.
because Capo Caco has arbitration rights and Riker Evans does not. And that's the big key difference in their situation. Evans does not have a whole lot of leverage in his situation, being honest, right? He can't go to arbitration, so he doesn't kind of have that deadline looming, right, or an award of a contract. His only leverage really, would be an offer sheet, and I don't think that's going to happen at this point of the summer. The Kraken have this cap space to match anything, so they'll come to an agreement on an extension. It might go almost to the not start of training camp. I'd be surprised if it went that far, but it could even go out into August, just because there's really no time pressure from either side to get it done.
Right. I mean, we saw this with Matty Beniers last year, right? Like there's not a big hurry to do this with these guys coming off of ELCs and you're looking at an extension. I mean, we saw him sign in August. I don't know why Riker Evans wouldn't sign in August. I don't have an exact date on the Matty Beniers contract, but it felt like it was late August. I don't know why Cap Wages just says August, but
August 20th.
yeah, I think something similar like that where it's like, okay, we're starting to plan out training camp and when everybody's going to be coming in. And so you can kind of loop back around and get something done and hammer something out there. But yeah, there's no reason to have a deadline. There's no reason to rush it. If you're Jason Botterill and the rest of the front office, all of your focus right now, contract wise, should be on Capo Caco and getting him signed before his arbitration date. And then realistically, the way most of these teams work, everybody kind of then takes a breather, goes on vacation, and then they'll loop back around closer to training camp.
Yeah, that's how it tends to work. And I think, as a front office, you just focus on your most pressing issue. And that's why Kako hasn't been done yet, is because they were focused on the draft. You want to draft the players and then you go out and you sign free agents. And that was your
Mhm.
next big thing. And so this is kind of what's next on the list. And I imagine Riker Evans will happen after that. But don't worry. He's going to be a Kraken to start the next season in all likelihood. Next question from Edward. And then Gary also asked a similar question. Are there any potential Capo Caco type situations, young guy, former top prospect, it's not quite working out, but could benefit from a change of scenery out there that the Kraken could potentially target? Is that even a thing the Kraken should be looking at versus, as you were saying, targeting a top prospect of a team in more of a win now type situation? So I remember last week we were talking about targeting prospects of those teams, mostly in terms of a Jared McCann trade. If you're going to trade Jared
Yeah.
McCann, that's maybe the type of player you want to look at. But I think the Kraken absolutely should be targeting other players like a Capo Caco type situation. Really, anybody under 25, I think, is great and fits in with your timeline. Anyone that you think has upside and like Capo Caco could maybe join that group of players for you.
Right. The reason that we basically didn't really talk about it last week is because those situations are just kind of few and far between. And so they're sometimes hard to predict. That being said, in the last week, there has been chatter around one of these players, and that's Mason McTavish of the Anaheim Ducks, 22-year-old center right now, somebody who put up 52 points in 76 games last year for the Ducks. But the Ducks, they're starting to have their own logjam down the middle. I think Mason McTavish was also kind of part of a different core from what they're realistically going to be going with long term, where he was kind of still part of that like Zegras Drysdale group of those guys, and really just anybody that was like tainted by the Greg Cronin coaching years. They seem to be like wanting to get them out of there. Um, I think Mason McTavish would be an absolute huge get, right? If Anaheim's trying to take a step forward and you look at like moving a Jared McCann type guy for somebody, they would be a team that would absolutely love to have somebody like Jared McCann who could step in and put up a bunch of goals for them and help them take that next step forward. And then in return, you could get Mason McTavish, who, yes, you're adding another young center, but somebody who could play on the wing. And more, specifically, you're adding somebody that has been over 50% on faceoffs the last couple of years, so he could help out you there, but also has been able to put up points in a way that some of your young players haven't really done at the NHL level yet.
Yeah, I think McTavish would be the perfect fit to add to this group. And if you could acquire him, there's a lot I'd be willing to give up. If the Ducks want to take a step forward, all right, Jared McCann, you want some, Jared McCann or something else too, I would add to it. Mason McTavish would be a great addition. Unfortunately, because he's in a team in division, I think the Ducks would be really hesitant to send him to Seattle. I think if they did ship out a player like that, where there's a lot of regret potential, if the player does hit and end up really good, you probably don't want him in division. I'd have a hard time seeing them making that deal, but he's definitely the type of player the Kraken should be going for. Other names like, Marco Rossi, was potentially on the market, but
Yeah.
he's a center. He just doesn't fit, given the other young centers you have. I find a lot of the players in that situation that are on the market right now are defensemen.
Mhm.
Nemitz, Clark, even like Bowen Byram, a little bit older, right? It seems like they're defensemen, and the Kraken don't really need to add, I think, a defenseman of that age and caliber. So of the forwards, there aren't a whole lot of guys available.
Yeah. So it's one where you never know. Like you have to keep yourself able to be fluid for when these situations arise. But yeah, they're really hard to predict when they pop up. I mean, Capo Caco, nobody was really talking about it until a couple weeks before that trade was made, and then all of a sudden he's gone. You know what I mean? Like that's just kind of how this tends to develop.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they happen fast, right? And so you just need to be able to pounce on it, act on it quick. And who knows, we'll probably hear a name in November, December that nobody's talking about right now.
Yep.
Question here from George then. RJ, directed at me. If you were the GM and had absolutely no restrictions from ownership or fear of being fired in the short term, what are your moves this offseason? How many vets are you offloading? Just curious how far you'd push the tank if that was your chosen avenue for long-term success. So, George, yes, go ahead.
You push the tank as far as you can.
Yes. I mean, in short, that is my answer, right? And especially if you don't have those restrictions from ownership or fear of being fired. I mean, we're into video game mode. Now I can go crazy. Now I can do what
Mhm.
is actually best regardless of any other circumstances. So for 1 year too, because you still have a generational player in Gavin McKenna coming up in the
Mhm.
draft, I would go all out. I would make this team as bad as possible for the 1 year. To start, I'm moving Schwartz 100%. 100% I'm moving Schwartz, Alexiak, Tolvanen, and Eberle. I am moving. I mean, if I get the benefit of like 2 months of just rewind, I also don't sign Lindgren. I don't trade for Gaudreau. I don't do that. If I get the whole off season, I'm also listening on McCann, Dunn, Montour, and Decord, and I'm trying to move those guys. If I want to kind of hold the line on my price because I don't want to give up those guys for nothing. But if I can get somebody that will meet anywhere near the amount of value, I'm moving out each and every one of those guys, especially Joey Decord. I'm sorry, but he is the thing that's keeping you from being really, truly bad. You kind of need to get rid of him. Also, just philosophically, right? He's in year one of a 5-year deal. I don't like goalie contracts with that term, even though given how insane goalie contracts are getting right now, it's a great deal compared to some of the other ones out there. But I'm trying to trade pretty much all those guys, and I think it still gives you enough of a core with the prospect group that you have with Matty Beniers, with Shane Wright, that you can kind of build that up in the next couple years after you get a really good player, and can kind of go from there and still not get caught in that trap where you're just awful for too long.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think that that's what it is. Like if you're GM, you're full tank.
Yeah, definitely. It's the smartest thing to do on paper. I understand the real life considerations, why you wouldn't do it, but that's the smartest thing to do on paper.
Mhm.
And then next one from Seattle Kraken GM, Eberle, Tolvey, Marchment, Schwartz, Alexiak are pending UFAs and not traded the contenders if the Kraken are out of it is fireable offense for this front office. If they were to do that, some opinion there from Kraken GM, but that's a lot of bodies. Do they all go? If the Kraken are say bottom 5 in the league come the trade deadline, do you think all of those guys get dealt? It is a lot of players.
That's the only reason why I'm saying like no is because that's a lot of people to get dealt.
I think
It's
one of them resigns, and I couldn't tell you who.
exactly. I think you bring back somebody, you have that, you probably just don't find a fit with somebody else. The other thing you have to consider is everybody but Tolvanen has some form of trade protection. So like you do need to work around that, and maybe there's not a deal in place that makes sense for them and their family, and so they veto something. It's one of those things where I just that you're talking about so many people that it just there's just too much logistically there that I think can happen, and get in the way of moving out literally everybody. But I think you see another aggressive sell-off just like we saw last year where you moved a significant number of bodies out.
Yeah, agreed. And I think Botcher will be smart enough to get done the deals that are possible to get done. So we'd see a lot of them, but maybe circumstances would pop up. Next question here from Paul. A true tank mode team calls up and offers to take Grubauer full hit, but you have to give up a draft pick to do it. How high are you willing to go? And gave multiple choice actually,
Mhm.
A, B, C, D, and E. A, your next year's Tampa's first. B, next year's second round pick of your own. C, 2 years from now, your first round pick, the Kraken first round pick. And D, Tampa's first rounder in 2027. Or E, just sit back and enjoy the ride. So I'm going with E. Look, the Kraken have already basically made the decision to write off this year, even at the lowest price of a second rounder. That's more value than just the lost cap of a buyout a year
Yeah.
from now next summer. Like the buyout is a preferable option than giving up a second rounder for the full cap hit. So I'm not, given the choice they've made, I'm not taking any of these trade offers.
Yeah, I'm not either. The cap space isn't that important to you, right? Like that's the thing is that you don't need that cap space freed up. And also, certainly in your world and realistically mine as well, we're the tanking team. If Grubauer is
That's
going to be
true.
rough again, we want him. um, so
Exactly.
there's that component with it as well. I think if the team was in a worse spot cap wise and they were coming into their window and it was like next year is really the step forward year, like if we were in the place of the Ducks, right? coming into this year and you were like, next year is going to be our year, and that cap space, maybe we could do something with it, signing a free agent or making a trade that would really put us over the top and make sure we're going to be a playoff team in theory, then that becomes a conversation where you're looking at maybe it's, you don't need a second round pick anymore if somebody's going to take Grubauer, and maybe you just retain 1.5 or something on it. But I just don't think the Kraken are in that spot where realistically next year is going to matter that much. You could buy him out if you do want the cap space. If not, you could just keep holding on to him and you'll probably be okay.
Yeah, the big decision they made was just this past offseason, and they've already made it. So at this point, it doesn't make sense to do anything. Next question from Ethan. If you were GM and they told you that you had to trade McCann before the season starts, oh boy, that's a Buffalo situation that would kill our leverage, isn't it?
Heck of a Buffalo situation.
Who are the top 3 guys you'd try to target? Can be realistic, but maybe throw one in there that's a clear reach. So Dylan, I think we talked about this a little bit last week.
Yes.
And I'll just repeat the names that I had, right? I mean, Marco Casper is my
That
clear
would be
pick,
huge.
I
Yeah.
think. Ryan Leonard, also a bit of a reach, but I think the realistic one I would target would be Liam Greentree out of LA.
Yep. Yeah, no, I like those names. You could throw Mason McTavish in there as the reach, maybe, because
That's
just
another one.
that would, yeah, that
If
he
you can
seems
get
like
him,
the biggest
do it.
reach. Yeah, but yeah, I think that those are the names. Those are the guys that I think are really kind of make the most sense for what the Kraken need, because you are essentially targeting wingers exclusively. There's not really a reason to target any other position group, and a lot of top prospects are centers or defensemen, and I just don't think it makes sense for the Kraken to target them. It's the bottom
Yeah.
line.
Agreed. You kind of have to be specific in what you're looking for. Next question from Anthony. If the plan is to retool or reset, what potential return is out there for Joey Decord, and would it make sense? And I wonder if we'll disagree on this one, Dylan. I'm curious if his value would be as high as McCann/Dunn. Just feels like he's the best asset, even if his popularity/term, recent contract, or replacing him makes a move tougher. So as far as his value, I'll start on that. It is kind of hard to tell because I
Mhm.
think there's in the past has been more of a cap on goalie value. You generally don't see goalies, even pretty darn good ones, move for more than, say, the equivalent of a first round pick. Just there, it seems like goalies don't ever fetch those really prime returns that skaters do. But if it's ever going to be different, I would think it's now, given the contract that he has, right? With the goalie market just going insane, you've had contracts like Thatcher Demko, even while we were both on our trips and everything since we last talked, Lucas Dostal
Yep.
signing for 6.5 on a long-term deal. Joey Decord and his contract might have more value than we think, and so as for value, I'd certainly be looking for like a blue chip prospect type rather than
Mhm.
just a mid first round pick, which is usually what a goalie like that'll go for.
Yeah, I think so as well. It's basically you're looking at similar, in my opinion, similar returns to what you're looking at for Jared McCann and trying to get from Jared McCann, in my opinion. And I think the other thing that's unique about Joey Decord in this situation is not just that you have the term at a reasonable cap number. You have him uh, already with two pretty different coaching systems in front of him, putting up good numbers, and there's no reason to think that this year, behind the most goalie friendly of the systems, that he won't continue to put up good numbers. And so if you were to move him mid-year or next offseason, you would be able to show teams you've got this style coach, this is what he was able to do behind them, right? You've got that style head coach, this is what he was able to do behind them. That's also kind of a unique thing, because a lot of times I feel like one of the things that holds up goalie trades, or maybe gives people pause about goalie trades, is you sit there and you look, okay, how much of this is the goalie? How much of this is the guy? How much of this is the system in front of him? That will not be a question at all with the Seattle Kraken, assuming Joey Decord continues to perform the way that he is, because none of those scenarios would it have been the system in front of him. It will, except for maybe this year. This upcoming season, it will definitively have been that Joey is just that guy. And so you will have taken that kind of potential holdup just completely out of the equation for any team interested.
Yeah, so I think his value would be high relative to goalies and what they usually go for. Would it make sense? I mean, I already talked about it for the one if I had no restrictions and I was GM. I think on paper, even right now, it makes a lot of sense. In reality, there are so many reasons why it doesn't.
Yeah.
I mean, fan favorite, at least having the chance of being somewhat competitive and not god awful next year. Like, those are probably the two biggest reasons I think that it wouldn't make sense to move him in a reality standpoint.
Yeah, and the fact that once you do start turning the corner and you do have these prospects, you want them to be in competitive games, right? You don't want the Connor Bedard effect in Chicago of just the losing accumulates and you're not quite in the place where you can turn that corner and guys are just losing like 60 times a year and they just hate life. Like you don't want that. And having a Joey Decord level goalie around ensures that you're going to win some games that you maybe otherwise shouldn't have. And at the very least, you're playing competitive third periods of hockey. And those guys are going
Yep.
to be in it and they're going to be in spots where they're going to learn how to step up, be the guy in the moment and get things done. And I think that that's extremely valuable. I think the one year that he's not valuable for you is this upcoming season where if you're going to be bad, you want to be as bad as possible. And as you talked about, he does not help you get Gavin McKenna. He's the number one thing standing in the way of potentially getting Gavin McKenna. But after that, I think that you do want not trade him just because you want somebody who's going to be solid in net, who can, make up and bail guys out when they make rookie mistakes, and then can also keep them in close games so that they can play competitive third periods.
The ideal scenario with Joey Decord is actually, I'd say, just freeze him and his contract in ice, just where he doesn't age, the contract doesn't move forward, and just do that for like a 1 to 2 years, depending on what your exact timeline is, and then just thaw him out exactly as he is right now in his contract, and then just have him going forward. I don't think the Kraken can really do that, but if you could, that's the best way to do it.
They've still been working on the Jared McCann cloning technology. I don't think we're at freezing a goalie in time technology yet.
All right, we'll put that one next on the tech tree for the Kraken.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. So, question from Chris, and more of a big picture team building type question. Given how we see other teams stretching out their cup competitive windows in the last 10 or so years, is there anything the Kraken could learn from those teams before our window opens? Anything we should change about player or contract management? So, I think there's a number of things you can do differently. I think there's a lot of lessons you can learn, many of which I've talked about on Armchair GM streams in the past, or even just on this podcast. I mean, I guess we'll go back to last week. The first thing you do is stop overpaying on most of your contracts, like we talked about last week. But I think as far as extending competitive windows, and I think you want to look at teams like, of course, Florida is going to be the team to look at. Tampa's another team to look at. The teams that have been successful in the last 10 years. As far as things that you can actually do and accomplish, because of course you'd love to trade for a superstar. You'd like to be Vegas and trade for Jack Eichel. You'd like to be Florida and trade for a Matthew Tkachuk. You can't just do that right now. But what you can do is sign your own guys, especially players you've drafted and developed, RFAs that you have, to long-term deals instead of bridge deals. That's a big one. If you really believe in the player and the talent, that's where a lot of bargains can happen when you commit to those guys. And I'll admit it's something Ron Francis did quite well in Carolina that kind of helped them with, like Jacob Slave and Brett Pesce, sign those guys when it was still a little uncertain, right? You have to get it right. But when you do, it can be, the gamble can pay off quite a bit. So I'd say that's a big thing. And then, I guess just take big swings when you can. When situations fall in your lap, be aggressive and go pull the trigger and do it. The Kraken have already passed up on a number of those situations in their 5 years really of doing business as an NHL franchise with players. I mean, Jack Eichel, the most notable of those. You have to be bold. You have to take those swings and, take those risks on your young players you believe in. And they did that with Matty Beniers. Like, that Matty Beniers contract is going to age well and better with the cap going up. I hope they're able to get Shane Wright locked in long-term at a nice number when his deal comes up. And we'll see if they believe in Riker Evans or how much. That's a big risk reward thing, right? You have to decide, if he's going to be a top 4 defenseman, you could get him at a steal of a contract on like a 6-year deal right now, but you have to evaluate your own guys well and make the bets accordingly.
Yeah, no, I echo everything that you just said. And, realistically, like you're in a good spot with this upcoming, next off season, right? Where you have a lot of contracts coming off the books. You're going to have money. You're going to be in a spot where you can handle things smart. and build around your core group of players, find players that make sense for them, and go out there, be aggressive on the trade market and try to make things happen there. Like, you're going to be in a good spot where you're not loaded down with too many contracts, but really what you want to avoid most most of all are things like the Chandler Stevenson contract, where maybe it's an overpay in and of itself already, but also you're just clogging up a the place where you have the most prospects and the most guys that are going to need ice time. We saw it year one of that contract with Shane Wright, and Shane Wright not being able to get the ice time that he needed because of Chandler Stevenson's presence. We're looking at seeing the same thing happen this year. We're seeing Berkeley Catton probably have to move to the wing in order to get into the lineup, things like that. I think that's the other thing that you need to be concerned about as you're starting to turn things over and go with your top prospects and have them mature into the NHL. You need to make sure that they're going to be in spots where they can actively contribute to your team and grow and develop properly. And you just don't want people clogging things up and being in the way.
Yeah, I think that's another good lesson to learn is, you need to make sure those homegrown guys can be your core because they're probably going to have to be. You look at these good successful teams, pretty much all of their cores are based on players they drafted as the best guys. So next question here from Luke. And by the way, Dylan, I'll let you just kind of, when you get to what you think might be a good stopping point
I
here, you
think
can
this
let
is
me know.
probably it. We're kind of
That's what I
finishing
was
the
thinking.
roster
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but this, I thought this was a good question to get to now, since we just talked about the roster stuff and some long-term goals for this team as well. And so, I think this is a good question too, because we haven't really taken a step back yet. We've talked about how we see this as a transition year, and it looks like that's what the Kraken are trying to do. And we've talked about some things that we hope that means for the team. But as far as like setting expectations of like, okay, what do you need to do in a year like that to be successful and to be the pass mark for this team next year, as Luke is asking, what would you say? I don't know, I've got three things here, but I'm sure you could maybe give a better answer.
I mean, the big one for me is just seeing that step forward from the young guys. Like, that's what matters. If this is a retool year, and it seems like it kind of is, um, I think what you want to see is you want to see Matty Beniers get back to year two level production. You want to see him being able to really be a top line center, because as much as he is your top line center right now, and he's great defensively and he can put up some numbers offensively, if he is your first line center, at some point you're going to need a first line center that can put up 60-65 points at the least, right? Like, bare minimum. And so you need Matty Beniers to kind of take that next step forward and kind of become that guy. You want Shane Wright to be able to step up and be that guy and utilize the offensive talent that he has. We'll see if he can kind of continue to put up points at the points per 60 rate that he was able to last year, which was phenomenal. Again, give him more ice time. Go out there, if you're Shane Wright, take over a power play unit, make yourself noticed, force the coach's hand into how much ice time that they have to give you, force them to give you 18 19 minutes a night out there. You kind of focus on that stuff. I think for me, that's really what I would consider a successful season for them. I don't think they're going to be a playoff team. I would love it if they were competitive late, but I don't totally know that is going to happen. I don't know that it has to happen at so much as just those young guys taking the next step forward. Now, not totally knowing things behind the scenes, I could see it very much being a different bar for the team itself, just because you need fan engagement. Right? There's a business side of it and all of that, and they probably would say that they need the team to be competitive later into the year. But I think for me personally, all that this year has to be is a year of growth for your young players. That's it. That's literally all it has to be. Berkeley Cat and Yanni Newman come in, they're able to stick, they're able to play a majority of games for you and get a lot of the rookie learning curve stuff out of the way so that they can take big steps next year. That's to me a pass. If you're looking for a record, I don't know, it's tough because, right, on one hand, be bad and try to get Gavin McKenna, right? Like, I think that would be huge for the franchise. Um, I Otherwise, be a playoff team, I guess, right? If you're not going to be a bottom tier team again, be a playoff team. if you're looking for something more in that way. But I just think where this franchise is at right now, the record isn't as important as the core group that this team needs to build around taking a step forward.
Yes, and I actually have my like list of things that I just said, or make the playoffs. That's
Yeah.
the only other way out of it, right? Either you're judged on your record or you're not. And if you're judged on your record, you better make the playoffs. You have to do that. But I don't think we're heading in that direction, so I won't spend any time on it. Then you're judged by the other things that happen, right? I'm with you completely on the players need to take a step forward. I always try and set more concrete goals. And for me, and this is still a little, wishy-washy, but Shane Wright and Matty Beniers have to be like top 2 centers in the NHL. Both of them. They've got to look like top 2 centers in the NHL. Like I'm saying, top 2 lines, of course, 1C or 2C, right? They have to look like it, and it has to be now. Like Matty Beniers is going to be, 23 next season, right? Shane Wright, you've talked about it, how it's kind of the make or break year to see if he really is going to be like a top 6 forward in the league or not. So they have to look like it by the end of the season. They absolutely do. And I think you need to see from at least one of Berkeley Catton or Yanni Newman that they're an NHL regular and that their arrow is pointing up and that they're going to trend to be a top 6 guy. Those are the expectations I'd put on the young players for a successful season. The other thing is you said players take a step forward. That's it. There's one more big thing I want to add. You have to fix the culture.
Yeah.
You have to solve the effort issues. You have to make sure we don't see any more of what we saw last season where are they going to be themselves tonight? Are they not? Are they going to just not show up for the first 20 minutes of a game? There should be no more questions around that. You should know what you're getting effort-wise from the team. Maybe not always skill-wise. Maybe they're not always good enough to get the win, but you should know what kind of effort you're getting on a consistent night-to-night basis. And if you don't get that, then I think the season is a failure. Yeah. You just need to solve that problem because so much of what you've done this offseason has been in an effort to solve that problem.
Right.
Good news is I think it's very solvable. You should be able to fix that. So those are my 2 things I need to see this season to make it a pass.
Yep. No, great addition. Great addition. I totally think that that's something that needs to happen too. So yeah, no, I think that that's good stuff. Love all these questions. Can't wait for next week to be able to go over even more with everybody. I don't even know that we made it through half of them.
Did we? Counting the numbers, I'm not sure. I'd like to think we got at least some sort of toward the halfway mark, 40%. I don't know. Yeah. So again, sorry if we didn't get to your question quite yet. There's a lot of great questions left. I kind of tried to just sort them by general category. So no better or worse. It just kind of sorted out that way. So we will definitely get to it next week if you didn't get to your question.
Yep, definitely. A lot of great questions left. And of course, we've got to talk about the great Rico Tessendor and the wonderful offices of Rico Tessendor that sponsor this podcast each and every week. And while we hope none of you ever need his services, the odds say that at some point, someone out there will be involved in an accident, whether on the road, at work, or anywhere in between. And when you are, we hope you call Rico at 425-778-9800 or visit his website, ricotessendor.com, to schedule a free consultation. He's won millions of dollars for his clients and helped thousands of people in the greater Seattle area. And as a fellow member of the ECH community, we know he'll help you too. Thanks so much for listening, everybody, and we will see you all next week.
Hey everyone, before we go, we just wanted to give a quick shout out to all of our awesome patrons over at patreon.com/Emerald City Hockey, especially our Terror of the Deep patrons.
Thank you so much for making all this possible. We really appreciate your support.